Hey everybody, today I'm going to go over the different parts of tuning. So a lot of questions are asked online, a lot of on the message forums and on the Facebook groups and whatnot. People looking for tuners, people to tune their stuff, people help them at the racetrack. We get a overwhelming amount of inquiry for me to tune stuff. So what I'm going to do today is go over the differences in tuning and what you should expect and kind of what you should look for. I want to preface this video with a couple things. One, in no way, shape, or form am I asking you to contact me to tune your car. I don't want to do it. We are only tuning cars that we have wired or that we've worked with in the past. You'll understand why shortly, but we do not do any type of remote tuning. It's just not my thing. And again, we're going to get into that in a minute. The other thing I want to touch on here is that this video, it's all my opinion here, right? So I'm not talking up or down anybody. Don't contact me and ask for a reference of if I think this guy's good or if he's not or what. No, I'm not going to give you any, I'm not going to get into that, right? So I'm not going to tell you, who's great, who's not, who's bad, whatever. Doesn't matter to me. Hopefully this video gives you some information so that you can make an informed decision when you hire somebody to tune your car or you decide to work with somebody. And I think by the end of this video, you'll understand why picking somebody to tune your car for you is an important decision you have to make when it comes to drag racing. So if you've got a 500 horsepower all motor daily driver with a Holley Terminator X on it, and you're never going to drag race it, this video is probably not for you. If you've got an extremely mild, combo that you're already pretty savvy with, this video isn't for you. This is more geared towards the guys who are drag racing and trying to be competitive, whether it be no prep or radial racing or big tire or bracket, whatever it may be. This is more focused towards the guys that are trying to put in laps every weekend, trying to become self-sufficient, be able to do all this type of stuff themselves eventually. These are the guys that want to streamline the process of getting their car faster. So, and in the grand scheme of things, that's what everybody really wants. It seems as if nowadays we have a large number of people that are looking for cars that run 4.0s with a 6.0 budget. Tuning is one of those things that it's either going to make or break your combination, right? So put a little bit of thought into it before you make that decision. And again, I'm not talking bad about anybody who does this. I'm not going to mention any names. It doesn't matter. There's guys that are awesome at all of these categories. There's guys that are awesome at one. There's guys that are terrible at one and awesome at the other. So anyway, let's get into it. The first thing that I want to go over is engine dyno, right? So if you have a new engine built and you, a lot of times when you have healthy nitrous engines, a lot of times your engine builders will want to run them on the engine dyno. Most of the time those engine builders want to run with a carburetor because they know it. Every now and again you get hit up, or we get hit up, asking for somebody to tune the EFI on the engine dyno. There's a ton of reasons as to why you would want to tune your engine on the engine dyno. Especially in front of your engine builder, right? Because sometimes engine builders will tell you this thing makes 1,000 horsepower on motor and it's a dud. So if you're paying $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 for an engine, it very well might be worthwhile to show up that day when he's going to run it on the engine dyno and see if he was lying to you or not. So engine dyno tuning is going to be this quickest category. The things you're going to accomplish on an engine dyno with EFI, you're going to work on your startup and idle, right? So obviously the engine has to start and idle before you can run it on a dyno. So startup and idle, that'd be the first thing that you accomplish. After that, you work on steady state stuff depending on the application. If it's a healthy nitrous engine, you don't need to do that, right? Because if it's a healthy nitrous engine, you don't want it to run for very long. If it's a turbo engine that you're tuning on motor to, kind of understand where it likes on motor for fueling and timing, you might play with this a little bit. But if it's something that isn't in this category of drag race, right, you'll probably spend a good bit of time playing with steady state. I will say this, when it comes to tuning, the hardest part of tuning an engine with fuel injection are drivability and economy, startup and idle. Those are the hardest things to accomplish when tuning EFI. So making power is easy if you're not an idiot. If you're an idiot, sometimes that's really, really hard. But if you're an idiot, you probably shouldn't be doing this. So, and then finally for engine dyno is making power. So everybody always wants to know how much power the thing makes, and obviously you're going to play with, if it's an all-motor combo, you're going to play with timing and with fuel and see what it likes and what it doesn't like. Maybe you'll play with valve lash and, advancing retard in the cam, see how it responds, whatnot. But that's really it for engine dyno. So already you can tell that if you are seeking somebody out to tune your stuff on an engine dyno, it's not going to be engine dyno and then I don't know anything about drag racing, slap it in the car and it's really fast. It's not going to happen. It just doesn't work. That's where you get into the chassis dyno, right? So there's a lot more that is involved because on a chassis dyno, the rest of the car's there, right? So there's a lot of things that change once the rest of the car is there as opposed to an engine being strapped to an engine dyno. Engine dynos, chassis dynos, horsepower numbers, that doesn't win races. So if you're drag racing, you don't race the dyno, okay? Now, am I saying that dynos are not important? Absolutely not. Dynos are extremely important, and depending on your application, this engine dyno could be very important, depending upon your application. 95+% of the people out there in the drag race world, they don't really do this. The 5% of the guys that build really healthy engine or nitrous engines, and the engine builder wants to run it on the engine dyno. I actually had a customer that brought me a car to wire and gave me a flash drive, and it came from a very well-known engine builder. It came with tune-ups from the engine builder himself with Holly EFI, and I thought it was actually pretty awesome. That's very, very useful for that application. But once it goes into the car, things change, right? So even something as simple as idle is different when it goes in the car because you don't know if you have the exact amount of load that your torque converter is going to apply at idle. So I'm sure all you guys have had the car in neutral and then you throw it in low gear and then the engine comes down in RPM. Well, it's applying load, that torque converter is dragging the motor down. And if it's on an engine dyno, you don't know that, right? So even if you get startup and idle right on the engine dyno, there's a really good chance that you're going to have to tweak idle a little bit once you get on a chassis dyno. I'm also not saying that you need to do all of these things, right? Most people here. So, brings us to chassis dyno. Startup and idle, we've already covered that. Steady state. So if you've got a street strip car, you drive this thing around on the street. Economy, drivability, and steady state are pretty important. So my personal car, it's a 23-ish 100 horsepower, turbo small block Ford. I will be the first one to tell you that I didn't work on any of this on the chassis dyno, but I tune my own stuff, and it is what it is. You will shortcut a lot of headaches by getting on a good chassis dyno with a good chassis dyno tuner and getting this stuff knocked out, right? These first four things are what makes your bill at the chassis dyno really high, okay? The chassis dyno guy and the tuner, they all know that this is the easy part, right? So these parts here are hard. So if you show up with a car that you just put together and you go to the chassis dyno and you make an appointment and you show up with a car that doesn't even start, you're in trouble. Your bill's gonna suck. Well, it ain't gonna suck for the dyno guy, but he's gonna be annoyed too because that thing should start up. It should at least start and kind of run, even if you got to keep your foot on the throttle. It should run on all 8 holes. It should, you know, I mean, everything should work. A lot of times, chassis dyno cost you a fortune because you didn't do this stuff in the garage, like I've made tons of other videos on that you should go watch. The chassis dyno, if you do what you're supposed to do in the shop, your chassis dyno appointment should be a half a day at most, as long as you don't encounter any, you know, major problems, right? So a lot of the guys that are watching this now are probably turbo LS guys or, you know, turbo small block guys. There's a ton of stuff that can go wrong on a chassis dyno that you should have fixed before you ever even hit the start button, right? So before you ever hit that starter, there was stuff that you could have fixed or done right the first time before you called up the dyno guy or your tuner or whoever and made an appointment, because doing that stuff in the shop is not costing you, you know, one of the dynos that we use, I think it's like 200 bucks an hour or something, 250 bucks an hour, or maybe 175, I don't even know. But it's, it costs a lot of money to, you know, figure out why your boost control solenoids don't turn on. So fix that stuff, make that stuff work in the shop before you go to the chassis dyno, right? So back to our list here. Chassis dyno, startup, idle, steady state, economy. What I mean by economy is getting in the car, driving it, and getting more than like, you know, 1 mile to the gallon. So you can replicate street driving really well on a chassis dyno, and depending on the chassis dyno, you can do a lot of different ways of loading the car down to simulate, you know, going up hills and whatnot. So if you have a street strip car, you should probably already know this, but it was more expensive to build in the first place, and it's going to be a lot more expensive to tune. If you have a race car, a lot of guys, does it start? They don't really care so much about idle, right? And if it don't idle, they're like, well, let's just jack some blade into this, the throttle blade into this thing, and screw it, it'll be all right at 1800. And then they're like, does it make horsepower? Well, hell yeah, we're good to go. So drivability, we don't drive it. It goes straight. We put it to the floor and that's it, right? Economy, yeah, it gets we use 3 gallons a pass. You know why? Because we only got a 3-gallon fuel cell. Steady state, there ain't no steady state. Engine RPM is going to be changing all the time when you're making a pass at the drag strip. So a lot of the drag race guys, you know, we just did a car a couple days ago. It's a street strip car, and I put a bass tune up in the car, and then we put it on the hub dyno, and I think it was 3 pulls, and we made 2100. So this stuff I kind of already nailed down for him before. We're in and out, I mean, in 2 hours, right? And that's with bolting the damn thing to the hub. So, so if you do all the stuff before you get to the dyno, you just show up, you make a lot of power, right? Make a lot of power, then you go to the track, right? So you make a lot of power, make a lot of power, and now you're here at the track. All right, so trackside tuning. So this is where people either suck or rule, okay? So trackside tuning, for me, okay, it's already come off of a chassis dyno. We already know that the tune-up that came off the chassis dyno, we made X amount of power at X amount of boost, whatever. And typically, if I'm tuning the car on the chassis dyno, I knock 2 degrees out of it or so, 2 or 3 degrees out of it, because probably gonna have a little bit more load at the racetrack than we did here, where we're making power, right? So I'll knock a couple degrees out of it, maybe I'll fatten it up a little bit. I do a lot of turbo alcohol stuff, so you know, it's kind of my move is fatten it up and retard it, and let's go make a rip and, you know, see what happens. So now we're trackside. Trackside, we're going to adjust making power. So the racetrack doesn't give you the fancy screen that says it made, you know, 19 billion horsepower at 3 RPM. It gives you this thing called a time slip, right? And they're pretty important because ET wins races. Mile an hour tells you if you've made more power, right? So if you're continuing to increase mile an hour at the same distance, you've made more power, right? As your back split comes down, you're making more power. So what I mean by back split is like 330 to the 8th mile. So making power, trackside, if you have a good trackside tuner, you're gonna learn to make more power, okay? Number 2, power management, right? So right now, it's almost 2022, and you can pretty much ask one of those telemarketers that asks you for your extended car warranty if they can just ship you like a turbo LS with a Dominator and and this transmission and this torque converter, and they probably have one because they're so damn common, right? So 1,000 horsepower is literally pulling it out of the catalog. I mean, it's very simple. It's easy to accomplish now. This isn't 10, 15 years ago where 1,000 horsepower was tough, right? So technology has made life a heck of a lot easier, which has made this power management a heck of a lot harder, right? So we've made a whole bunch of power, and then we're really dumb and we decide that we're going to put it on a really small tire, right? Which isn't really dumb. I prefer radials anyway. But we're going to make a whole bunch of power on a really small tire. We need to figure out how to manage it, right? So power management's got a few niches to it, right? So, and again, this depends upon your application. So is it a nitrous car, is it a turbo car, is it a blower car, is it a screw blower car, whatever it is, there's different ways to go about it. I'm not going to talk about how to work power management, but you understand that, and I hope you understand by now, that the guy that you hired to do this, he could or could not know shit about this, okay? That are fantastic on engine dynos, and they know how to make a ton of power, and then you bring them to the racetrack, and the only thing they know about it is where the concession stand is, okay? So, but then there's some guys that are really good at this, right? But they really suck at this. So you kind of got to feel out everybody you're going to hire. And again, don't contact me, okay? I'm not for hire. Contact somebody else. Find somebody that you like, whatever. So, power management. Power management comes into play by making too much power with maybe bad track conditions, right? So there's guys out there that know how to kill power to make it go down a racetrack, but then they kill too much power, right? So you have to understand, as a trackside tuner, you have to understand what track conditions are, right? So that only comes from experience. You can't read a book about that. You can't listen to me and I tell you that track conditions. It doesn't work that way. It comes from experience, right? It comes from a lot of notebooks, a lot of note taking. It comes from a weather meter. It comes from a temp gun, reading the track temp. It comes from a lot of trial and error, right? So track conditions are very important. The tune-up that you ran in December isn't going to go down in August because the track just got 40 degrees hotter and it sucks, all right? Or maybe they mixed the wrong shit the night before and now they're spraying diesel fuel on the racetrack and you don't understand what's going on as opposed to glue, right? So that happened in Georgia a couple years ago, by the way. So the other side of trackside tuning is chassis tuning. So the upper echelon of racers, they've got a guy for this, chassis tuning. They've got a guy for this, they've got a guy for this, they got a guy for this, they got a guy for everything. And then they also got the coffee guy, and then they got the lunch guy, and then so they have everything. I'm not talking to them. They don't need me. They don't need this shit, right? They don't need to learn all this. And they certainly don't want to watch my dog paw. They got guys that do it already for them, right? So this isn't talking to them. This is talking to you that is new to this, or that has been doing this for a few years, but now you're switching over to EFI. Chassis tuning is understanding what changes you need to make to the chassis in order to go down that racetrack in those track conditions with the amount of power that you've made with your limitations of power management. So that's a lot to understand. this here, Trackside, people that Trackside Tune are usually really stressed out, usually don't talk to many people, and are usually, if they're good at this, they really hate doing it, right? Or they may love it, but it's very stressful, so it's not a walk in the park. So understand that if you hire somebody to do Trackside Tuning for you, that this isn't just a, hey, we're going to show up on a Thursday night at this slip and slide racetrack, and we're going to go personal bests everywhere, and then that tune-up's going to go down everywhere we go. That's not the way it works. Track conditions can change by the minute, by the round, by the hour, by the day, whatever. So the chassis can change by the round, like from round 1 to round 2. Power management changes a lot, right? So a tuner, Trackside Tuning, is in my opinion, and again, this entire video is all my opinion, Trackside Tuning is absolutely harder than these two by a mile, okay? These two are pretty simple. This is very hard. And the hardest part about it is this right here. Number 5, racer education. So what I mean by that is when I go to the racetrack and I tune cars for people, I'm not a polygamist, so I can't be married to everybody, right? My fiance would be really pissed because it's been a year and we still ain't married. That's her fault. But so I can't be married to everybody. So my goal here is to educate you on doing these things yourself so that you don't have to continue to pay me to be there with you every single time you let go of a button, right? I don't need to hold your hand. Oh, sorry. I don't need to hold your hand, for life, right? So my goal, when I Trackside Tune for you, and again, don't call me because I'm not doing it for you, but this is hypothetical, is to make all these things happen, and I want to educate you along the way, right? So if I've wired your car and we have worked out a deal where I'm going to tune your car at a racetrack, day one, we're going to spend a lot of time of me educating you, right? Because do I like getting paid? Yeah, of course, but I've got too much other work. So I want you to be proficient where it only takes a phone call or a text message or an email of a data log, and we can get you, back going, in the correct direction. So I spend a lot of time in racer education. That to me is probably the hardest part of Trackside Tuning because people don't react like cars do. Race cars react pretty much to what you tell them to do. People, they don't, So that brings me to the last part of this, which is remote tuning, which is the thing that I see 99% of the time when it comes to I need a tuner, can you tune my stuff, yada yada. It's remote tuning. So again, if you made it this far into this video, you understand that I'm talking to the people that want to drag race and go fast, not the, hey, I've got a 500 horsepower cruiser and, whatever. There are people out there that remote tune, and they have a fantastic reputation or they have a bad reputation. It doesn't matter what the reputation is because I'm not talking about other people that do this. The job that they do can only be as good as the information that they have because they're not on site to gather the information themselves, right? So it's all the above, right? Remote tuning is here, it's here, it's here, right? It's all the above, but with only half of the data or the story, right? So remote tuning, the biggest problem with remote tuning is that the remote tuner has to rely upon you, the consumer, the customer, the guy who owns the car, the guy who's paying the bill. And no offense, but a lot of times you guys are wrong. Or you don't know what to look for, and it's not your fault because you don't do this for a living. So understand that if you've got a combo that already runs and drives and it's okay, and now you just want to bring it to a dyno and you want to make sure it's reasonably safe, then this might be your avenue, right? But if you're trying to be competitive in any of this, this usually isn't your avenue unless somebody has already been trackside with you or chassis dyno with you. Well, this doesn't ever equate to this, but somebody's already been here with you and now they're remote tuning for you because they couldn't make it or because they don't want to drive halfway across the country. Remote tuning is fantastic because technology has given us the ability to log into your computer, watch you from halfway across the country, make changes, and make your stuff run better. There's guys out there that are awesome at it. I am not much of a remote tuner. I like to hear, smell, feel, the whole 9 yards. I'm more of a hands-on type of person. So I also don't like relying upon the information that I'm given by somebody who isn't well enough educated on the topic. So that's not a dig at you guys. You're not supposed to be. If you're looking to hire somebody to tune your stuff, you're obviously not educated extremely well on the topic because you just do it yourself, right? Why the hell would you hire anybody? Because you can just do it yourself. So, again, remote tuners, there's plenty of them out there that are really good at what they do, but the remote tuning's end result can never be as good as something in person unless there is somebody that the remote tuner is working with on site that is very well versed in everything that he needs to know, right? So there's plenty of people out there that do this. I don't, unless it is somebody that I've already wired the car for, I've already been here, or they've already been here, then I've already been here, and now we're continuing on that racer education that I was talking about. So I don't do this at all. Do I send global files out to people to help them get their car started and running and, hey, this should be good? Yeah, of course. Do I help out friends? I help out customers, hey, here's a startup tune. This will get you up and running. This will get you pretty close on the dyno. Yes, yeah, but that's not remote tuning. Remote tuning is somebody logging into your computer on TeamViewer, making modifications while you're on a dyno or you're street driving, which you should be doing. That's remote tuning. This is where I live, right? And then occasionally here. And usually we only go here when we got a brand new car or a new combo or whatever. And we do that to make sure that everything's safe and close and good to go. So hopefully you're a little bit more educated on choosing the people to do the job for you. And also understand that once it's done here, doesn't mean that you'll never touch it again. You're going to be in it every round. Usually, turbo cars, I always tell our customers that we're trying to turn them into boost controller operators, okay? That's the goal, is to turn them into a boost controller operator and timing retard operators. But they're still doing power management to track conditions and the chassis. So, which can't be done here because the chassis dyno is not the racetrack with glue on it or the no glue, right? In closing, no prep tuning. For this, it's a crapshoot, right? So wing it. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not into the no prep stuff. Don't really care for it. We've got plenty of customers that do it. I help them answer questions and fix problems and whatnot that they've had from their installations that they have done. But I don't really do much of the trackside no prep stuff because it's not really my world. I also don't do a lot of the big tire, slick tuning either because it's not my world. Because I'm honest enough to say that I know what I'm good at and I stick to what I'm good at and I don't go off doing things that I'm not good at, right? But there's a lot of people that are like in here or here that go to here, and the only way that they're going to get good is to try, but I have no interest in doing this. So find you somebody who's really good at what they do. or at least that you feel is really good at what they do, and find you somebody who communicates well and is responsive in a reasonable amount of time. The other thing is that when you hire somebody to tune your car, understand that they have a life, and you do not need to call them on a Saturday at 1 in the morning because you're going into semis and you think that I should give a crap. Okay? Don't do that. That's not right. That's not fair. If your tuner that you've hired and that you've worked with in the past is at a racetrack, maybe with his own car or with another customer, it is also not right for you to run up to him with a laptop and act like he should drop everything he's doing to jack you off and get you, going back on the right track for your next round. Because that's not right either, right? So know your boundaries, know your limits, and make decent decisions so that you have better end results. So hopefully that helps. See you.